Zig coming in on the top. Today on the show we have Matt Pless, singer-songwriter. Matt's been one of my favorite singer-songwriters for a minute. Me and Michelle Gall, and Michelle Gall goes back to the very beginning of these podcast episodes. When I really started to dig into the podcast, it was to help support Michelle Gall's virtual show concert series, and she was raising money for local musicians. We would do these tours, like little tours where we would go play out of town for a week or a weekend, and we did one in New York. And it ended up, we played at this venue called Thunderclap, which was a DIY venue put in Ian Compton. He plays in a band called Lem, as well as a bunch of other projects. It was this apartment complex, but the show was in this backyard. And it was me, Gall, and Matt Pless, Lem, and there was another artist I can't remember. But me and Gall lucked out and got this other gig too, because when you're doing that, you say yes to whatever and show up wherever. But Matt started to play, and we were like, we can't go until he's done. And we snagged one of his CDs and listened to it to the whole ride back. And it's really cool stuff. And I've been looking for an excuse to talk with them, so I'm glad this popped up. And this, out of all places, came up because of Keith Kenny, who we had on the show earlier. And that's my favorite part about the music scene. It just gets smaller and smaller, and in a good way, where you're like, oh, I know that guy. And I'm so glad he's still hustling and doing it. So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about Matt's new album. Matt has a new album. It's called Cheap Shot on the Rocks. It's available on all streaming platforms, and the physical copies will be coming out soon. We're going to listen to Charlotte Divine. So yeah, this was a great conversation. I want to point out now, because I know someone's going to point it out later. During one of the bits, I was comparing the new record to a record called Call It Art, and I didn't say Call It Art. I called it something else. So I don't mean to disrespect or make it seem as if I didn't do my homework, because Call It Art is a great record and a great song. It was just at this point in the conversation, it was like a caffeinated conversation. It was really like, yeah. And I don't know if it's because I came in all that hyped up for this conversation, because this actually got bounced around a few times, and we landed on this date, so I was all like ready to jump into this conversation a few times already, so I was like, yeah, let's go. But before we dive into that conversation, if you can rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on any of the podcast platforms, that would be rad. It helps me keep talking to cool people and sharing those insights with you. Now, let's dive into it. This is me and Matt Pless. We met, I think in 2017 or 18 maybe, at this venue in New York. It was a house venue called Thunderclap.
In Brooklyn.
Yeah. Me and my friend Michelle Gall were doing like a little tour, and we played a bunch of spots in New York. And
was it out-of-system transfers there?
Yeah, and who else was there? It was Ian Compton's band. I can't remember the name. Lem.
Okay, yeah, I don't remember them.
Him and his girlfriend. It was their place, and we played in the backyard of this apartment.
Oh, different. That's a different show, not out-of-system transfer. I played there with the Twindos, and I think me and I guess the band you're talking about, if I'm remembering right, maybe.
Right. Well, and it was, so it would have been, I don't know if they went by that then, but since then Ian's moved to back to PA. But we played that show, and you went on, and I was like fucking blown away, because I did a bunch of looping guitar stuff, and my friend, she's a singer-songwriter, and then you came on, and we were just like, what the fuck? And I remember talking to you after that show and kind of hanging out for a little bit, and you kind of tell me a little bit of your history, and then we lucked out and got some other random bill that night, because you know when you're trying to fucking fill these tours, you're just throwing everything out, and it never usually comes back, but when you do, you're like, sweet. So we caught your set, and then me and you chatted for a bit, and then we dipped, but we picked up one of your CDs, Tumbleweed, and we listened to it all the way back to Cleveland, me and my friend Michelle Gall.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and like we're just because she's like that Cran song he sung, which one had that? Like, but so ever since then, I've been like a fan of your work, man. And like whenever I need to like get the itch to like write shit, I'll like I'm sure it's the same way for you. Like you have those artists that kind of make you want to do shit.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Like and like for me, if it's like people I've met before, it's even more inspiring. And like I remember like so every time I need I get the drag of like I don't fucking want to do anything. I'll pop on one of your records or a Dylan record, something that like just makes me like my brain like think about words and putting shit together. All that being said, do you have what are the handful of artists for you that make you want to do that?
Um, I mean, Bob Dylan was definitely one back in the day when I first, discovered his stuff. Um, Connor Oberst from Bright Eyes, always kind of get stuff moving if like I hear a new song by them. John Prine in the beginning used to really inspire me. A lot of these people I'm naming, like they had their moment to kind of inspire me to like, write, but that was when they were more new to me. I've heard so much of their stuff at this point. I don't really like, hear like, Hard Rain's Gonna Fall and feel inspired to write like like something like in that vein, just kind of faded a little bit. But I would say those three when I started were, and nowadays, like, I don't know, I guess it's random. I'll hear random songs from people or just whatever comes on a Spotify curated list, and sometimes they'll be like, oh cool, like I want to write something like that, or that makes me want to pick up the pen and guitar and put something out, so I don't know, I guess recently I couldn't name anyone specific, but those folks were some of the people back in the day that really inspired me.
That's cool. That makes sense because it'd be like just like food. Like if you go to fucking Taco Bell so much and get the same thing, eventually it's gonna stop tasting like anything.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, there's also I would say, I'm trying to think. There's been more over the years, but I would say they're the biggest influences. A lot of rap music and stuff. Sometimes poetry. I'd read poetry. I mean, just some random poet from like the 16th century or something. I'd come across and like be like, wow, this is a really cool imagery going on in this poem, and just like inspiration's hard to.
What?
Inspiration's kind of hard to figure out where it comes from all the time.
Yeah, for sure. And like, well, because it's kind of part of life, It's like enthusiasm is that like what drives that kind of that whatever that inspiration may like be, whatever object that may be, or like that worked out real nice. What's that? That's a painting, and those colors blend together well. Whatever that like object is that inspires the inspiration, it's the enthusiasm within the person. So like an enthusiasm is like fucking absurd. There are people who are like enthusiastic about trains, you know what I mean, like and like it's been doing this podcast for a while and asking kind of like just like the arc of like, because I don't believe like everyone's like talented. I believe everyone works at it. And even if it is a natural talent, it's work to be refined and able to like express, And like, I don't like, it's inspiration's like a weird question to ask because it is just that. It's someone's enthusiasm for a thing, and that could be anything. It could be about trains or comics or popcorn or whatever, It's like random. But so that it's interesting because I've noticed personally, like I don't listen to those artists a lot. I'll save them for when I feel bummed out or not like I want to write, like, oh, I want to write something. So I'll kind of like save that reserve in a way. But what kind of like to dive into that, which with your work, it's like so like well written, and like I feel so much attention is put into the narrative of everything. So do you do lyrics first, or is it kind of a process together?
I guess it's all different because sometimes I'm always thinking of like lines that'll pop in my head, just cool phrases and stuff, and I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna put that in the bank, and I'll write it in my phone or on a notepad or something, and it just sits there, and sometimes like the song they belong in doesn't come around until like a year later. And sometimes, like, I'll just be playing guitar and like mumbling stuff into the air while I'm playing chords, and just stumble upon a melody that I'll be like, oh, that's a good melody. And maybe the lyrics sound like the sound I was making with my voice when I was humming to the guitar strumming. And it just kind of comes about in this kind of feeling way. It's like feeling like the invisible stuff and making it into something tangible, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
hard question. It's like it's it's focus and stuff, and kind of just getting used to like feeling stuff out a certain way and finding a formula that you're comfortable with that seems to work for you. You don't want to get stuck in that forever either, though. I don't know. Lyrics always just kind of came pretty easy for me. I used to busk in New York City in the street subways under the streets, and I remember because I didn't play like some cool violin or like a piano or something where people could just listen to the music and enjoy it and tip you. I had to find a way to make people pay attention to me with like lyrics, because otherwise I was just strumming like folk songs to like a platform of people waiting for a train at like 3 a.m. And so I started to notice certain lines of my songs that were clever or whatever would make someone stop and turn and look at me and like smile or something, or come over and give me $1 because it tickled their brain or something. And so I started trying to think of like, put my brain in a place that was going to be thinking of witty lines and catchy kind of ways of saying some like, far-reaching statement in a sort of like very simplistic and like bouncy, rhythmic, rhyming, playful sort of way. And I think that kind of got my head into this like place of like, I want to hit someone with lyrics like I'm punching them, like hit them with a line, and then before they can recover, you hit them with another line, and then before they can recover, just keep hitting them with lines until they're just like, what did I just hear?
That's
So
that's all. Like the busking, like it's kind of is very kind of Hemingway in a way, like because he had that whole 6 word story thing, and
mhm.
like and that's hard to do. Like because as a guy I've been more of a guitar guy my whole life, so writing's always been like a challenge, and that's not that I know like a lot of interviews harp on, well, do you do the words and the music? But like with you, it's like, I don't know. Because like I've gone through all the stuff and including the new record, I'm like, everything is so well written. Like there's got to be like I don't know. Because honestly, most of it I feel like you can't write without music behind it. You need the canvas to kind of put it on. But like that busking, it's such a weird the gap of, because like you're fishing for a slight like a second of someone's attention, and that's all you get. And that's why like piano dudes or looping dudes or the guy with the didgeridoo and the crazy drum set and the saxophone is going to get all the people coming over to him because he can loop that whole thing for hours, you know?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
doing what you're doing, I'd imagine that'd be super hard. Like, because just like how you're saying, now you're writing like these dense lines. But as far as a writing challenge and to get to see what works in real time, that's badass.
Yeah, it's fun. It's like putting a puzzle together for me, like I'm like a geek with it. Like I like seeing how cool of something I can make with words, just by myself in like my room as I'm putting it together. And like when it's finished, I'll know like, okay, this is cool. Like, and usually like people are into it. I don't know if I just have good tastes and a lot of other people have the same taste, or if like I just know a certain, just from experience and doing it over and over, or just a little bit of a sixth sense of knowing what a lot of people can relate to. I think a lot of people, no matter what kind of sound you're putting out there, everyone can read something, and if it's written well and entertains their brain, I think everybody can relate to like a little bit of whimsy wisdom.
Yeah. And it's with music, it's interesting because like if the music, neurologically what's going on. What's really interesting about music is your brain is kind of asking what's about to happen and then resolving it. So that's like the 5-1 chord, why that sounds real nice, and we use that in a lot of music, or a 1-4-5, and it goes back to one. And we want that resolve. So as your brain's hearing that, it's solving this riddle, right? And if it's like a simple progression, like a folk song or even just one chord, your brain doesn't have to figure it out. It's all right there. So it hears what's on top of it. So if you can like have that kind of like accompaniment be like solid and not as complicated, what's on top gets to shoot out more and sticks out like louder. Like I think of it like James Brown music, like it's all one chord, right? Until he
Yeah,
shouts he's going to the next chord, and
yeah.
like everyone knows he's going because he confirms it with the band. Um, but you hear what he's saying on it. So like, and it's interesting because like did you start like well, let's kind of back up because you started playing in a band, right? From what I remember from our conversation in New York, like this is stretching it, but I swore you told me you played bass in a band before we started doing your solo project and writing and going on your own.
I played I played electric guitar and sang for this punk band. We were called Three Prong Outlet. And I wrote the songs for that band too. And we played for like 5 years or something around the Mid-Atlantic area and some Midwest and New England and Southern East Coast tours. And you know, it was a good time. We fell apart because mainly I was tired of replacing band members for various reasons. People went off to college or got married or joined some other band, or and I decided to go solo because I figured I could handle everything myself. I'm really better at I'm really better at like working with myself. I guess. I like playing with bands, but I don't get as much of a chance to do it these days because, the solo thing, and it's hard to find people who are willing to like play in your solo project as like, people backing up your songs. But I like playing in bands, but it's definitely easier to do it alone.
Definitely, especially if you plan to leave town, you know.
Yeah, for sure. That's a big thing. I mean, I've been able to tour nonstop for me before COVID kind of screwed everything up. I was touring all the time. I tour constantly. I'd play anywhere and everywhere, and that's the advantage of just being a guy with a guitar. And I, I'm I am lucky in the sense I think that although I do like to play with a band when I can, like on the new album, I have heard from people, oddly enough, that they actually enjoy me solo more than when I'm with a band for whatever reason. That's what usually grabs people the most, maybe because they hear the lyrics clearer and that's what captures them, or I don't know what it is, but it definitely is usually the opposite. People are like, you're going to need a band for people to pay attention. People want to hear a band, and I think that's kind of a rare thing in my experience. To have people be like, I'd rather see you by yourself.
That is because usually the bands it's weird that it's interesting because like so when you stopped being in Three Prong and you started doing your own stuff, like Requiem for a Dream, like that first record, like
Requiem for Wishing
Well.
Well. Yeah.
I put my own.
If it was Requiem for a Dream, I'd have a lot more money.
Yeah, what the fuck? But with that record, the one song on it, "What You Will," that was like the only one on that was by yourself. So did you like initially think or plan to do like your solo project or your self-titled project as a band, and then
sorry, go ahead.
Because in Tumbleweed, "What You Will" was on that too. So like going through kind of your discography before talking, like I was like, sounds like you were trying stuff on this record, and that's the thing that stuck. But also it makes sense because like, man, I have a band with two other dudes, and it's hard enough. You know what I mean? To like agree on anything. So was that kind of just trial and error, and like the process of kind of weeding out, and like you had to do this all on your own, or was it kind of like your message is conveyed clearer by just sticking it through yourself?
Well, when I wrote that album, I remember that's like one of the examples of like Bright Eyes. I had just started like listening to, I think, the Bright Eyes album Lifted came out like in 2004 or whatever, and or two, and then I got really oh cool, this guy is doing all these like layers, and like he's like the new Dylan of the moment, and like all these different instruments are on there, and he's building these orchestra tapestries and all this stuff. So I got into this whole thing of like, I'm just gonna be this like solo guy who builds these like makes this huge painting out of sound on like a canvas. Like my head was just really into just experimenting with whatever. And looking back, it's like, yeah, this just sounds like a dude putting a band behind like fast acoustic punk songs for the most part. But at the time, it was, but it was all based on kind of like Bright Eyes concept. And What You Will was actually the last thing I put on that album. It was written at, like right at the last minute. And I don't know really. I don't know where that really came from. I was just sitting in my room one night and just started playing guitar, and it came out. I think I was like 24 or something. I don't remember when that. Yeah, 2004. Yeah. So yeah, when that was done, I was like, oh, this is cool. What do I do with this? And I was like, well, I can just put it on this album that I have done, even though it's mostly band stuff. I mean, Bright Eyes has acoustic songs on their albums with other songs with bands on them. So I wasn't really thinking about it. I just threw it on there. And then when what's it called came out, Tumbleweed, I just felt like, well, I'm going to throw What You Will on here because I play it better now, and I think I like the live kind of recording sound of it on Tumbleweed better, and it fit better there anyway. So I just threw it on there.
Nice. Like it because it kind of seemed like listen now hearing that it was kind of Bright Eyes inspired, like because his stuff is so fucking layered and it's beautifully done. And you know what I mean,
Yeah,
like there's not one that's better than the other, right? There's a art as good as like work in the studio like that, and then just it by itself is equally as cool. So like, okay, so it was just kind of a that makes and that did that lead into it, like, or was it just like as far as that attempt of writing songs like that, like What You Will after writing that one, and it almost sounds like it's like the Paranoid, like oh, just recorded it and threw it on there, like those like, which is I guess sometimes how the best shit happens, but like did that kind of inspire the next batch of tunes that led to Tumbleweed, or were they kind of in the works as well?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember what after that. I went right after that album came out, the Requiem's one. I got in my van and just drove up to New York City to like try to make it big. Back when that was a thing that people could do, and yeah, I just started kind of like emulating the whole Bob Dylan thing instead of Bright Eyes, and got myself a stupid hat and like a whole the whole like aesthetic, and just went up there and was playing on the streets. And that was kind of like just me learning how to write and learning how to finger pick and play old blues progressions, and just learn more about guitar playing from being around better musicians, because there's so many good musicians in New York City. You're just around this environment that's sort of competitive and inspiring all at once, and it's just this nonstop. I would get up and I would take the train to the city from the closet that I used to sleep in for $120 a month, and I'd get into Washington Square Park, and I'd sit around the park all day and play music and get tips and sell CDs and hang out with random like girls from NYU, and just like find places to sleep at night, go to open mics every night, like Monday through Friday. If I wanted a slice of pizza, I just play on the corner till I got like $1.50 to get pizza. And like, it was just this constant like meeting people, learning music, doing open mics, like, practicing writing on like pieces of paper and like cardboard and notebooks, and just a backpack filled with just all this creative stuff. And like, yeah, that was what that was like at the time. So I wrote a ton of stuff during that period, but I'd say that What You Will kind of got me into the realm of thinking about writing maybe more topical stuff or political stuff or social commentary stuff. And I'd say What You Will inspire kind of moving towards that kind of more lyrically long, intricate type of writing.
Okay. Yeah, like it definitely seemed to be like a turning point. And like, do you find is it easy for you to kind of write like a topical thing? Because like like you got this way of like like you kind of like a long-winded way of like kind of summarizing a thing, and like how going back to the busking thing, like the quick and like uh uh catchy like thought of it, but the phrase itself is like the verses are long, right? So it's like looking at it, some of those tunes, you get a lot of a chance to say something, but you gotta, even just to put something in the line of a song, to sum it down, like, because if you break down like poetry and like compared to like a narrative, right, like or like an essay, you really gotta sum it down to like some key emotional factors. Do you find it easier to write like kind of topically, I guess is my question, compared to like emotionally? Or is it like at least during this time, like when you're like kind of like, or is that not the case when it was the opposite?
I would just kind of wait until I heard a um I would wait until I heard like a melody that sounded like a memory in my head and had that kind of melancholy sort of vibe to it, whether it was fast, slow, just kind of this thing that made me feel a certain way inside. And, then I just like, sometimes, like I said, I would have a certain lyric or line or phrase that went with it or that I was sitting on. And, it would just come together. But, other times I guess I would, I'll put it this, think of lines that some of which were topical or political lines, or they would just come out and I'd write them down. And then, depending on the melody that might come to me later as I was strumming guitar, I might grab one of those lines that were sitting down and say, I'm going to work on this line. And if that line started out with like for instance, that's this song called Nero that I had this line in the chorus, fiddle watching Rome burn down. And I just had that sitting in my head forever. And then one day I was, writing whatever, and I was like, I'm going to grab that and write a song based on that, and just kind of put my head in this place where I was like, write a song about like, the downfall of an empire and just like all that goes on and the destruction of that socially and politically. And like, just sort of like seeing yourself as like this person who is tried to like things and help things, but watching it not work out and sort of just saying like, fuck it, I'm just gonna sit and like chill while this goes to hell, like, which like the song titled Nero, like Nero played the fiddle while Rome burned, and like that song sort of just like putting myself in that position as like in symbolism way, being like it's like a metaphor for just like watching the world burn and not giving a fuck. So I would say that writing topical or political songs would happen if I had a line sitting around that I thought was good, and then I was in the mood to say I'm going to build on that.
Okay. Yeah, I just personally I felt like to write on something like that, you got to know a lot about it, but also like just to kind of like emotionally examine it too is equally as like that makes sense, equally as valid or equally as impactful, or can be conveyed equally as impactful. So cuz like this whole, so as you're like just living in this closet and immersing yourself in like people's like creativity and trying to like yourself examine and see where you're at, like as far as like guitar, like growing on the guitar, like where were some of the mic nights you were hitting up, and who are some of the guys that showed you like this is a Travis picking?
Oh, well, I used to go to the Sidewalk Cafe a lot in New York City. It was in the Lower East Side, and that was a really big place back then. Like, the Moldy Peaches and Kimya Dawson played there, and Regina Spektor, and like, I heard Beck used to play there. A lot of people came through there. So I used to go play their open mic every Monday, which was like this 9-hour open mic from 7 p.m. till like, 5 in the morning or whatever. And it was long, hundreds of people would play there, and that was a really competitive atmosphere. But there was this place called Cafe Vivaldi in the West Village. That's, both of these venues are gone now, but Cafe Vivaldi was another open mic that I used to like. I liked it more because it was more singer-songwritery and less that anti-folk folk punk sound. And at the time I was trying really hard to like be like a skilled acoustic guitar player, folk music. So I did those two a lot, and this place called the Village Ma, which became these guys called Roots and Ruckus, who ended up starting this thing called the Jalopy Theater for the really, Americana type of artists that come through now. I think they're still active, but I would say that those 3 open mics were the big ones I went to, but there was tons all over Brooklyn that I would do, but those 3 were the big ones. And as far as performers who, I guess this guy, Eric Franzen, who was this really old dude who saw me playing on the street outside of some bar one night on McDougal Street in the West Village, and he was like, "Hey, you want to come in and have a beer? I'll teach you a thing or two about guitar." And I was like, "Okay." So we had a beer, and he took me across the street to his apartment. This guy's like 75 years old, and he like had pictures on his wall of him with like Hendrix and like Dave Van Ronk and all these people from back in the day, and like he'd like been around, and Dave Van Ronk, who was a famous a folk musician in the 60s in the Village. He taught him how to finger pick, and he said, "I'm going to teach you how to finger pick like that," because I was finger picking in the wrong way, he said at the time. So he taught pick, cross picking, traverse picking, whatever it's called. And like, that's the sound that I kind of got really comfortable with doing. And, I left his apartment and just kind of practiced playing that finger picking rhythm over and over for like a week in the park. And then one day I was sitting down like a week later by his apartment down the street a little bit, just on the corner, finger picking it, and I had gotten it right. And as I'm playing it and just going off, I hear this voice above me go, "Hey man, you got it." And I looked up and it was this guy, Eric, and he was like, "Come by again sometime, I'll teach you some more." And so that guy taught me, he kind of opened the door to writing all those finger picking songs. And the first song I ever wrote with that finger picking style was the Crayon song. And I'd say he was probably one of the biggest influences as far as teaching me, opening my guitar playing up when I was in New York.
Damn, that's epic.
Yeah, it was
I
pretty
taught
cool.
him how to do it. Yeah.
He doesn't even care. He doesn't even remember, but I remember.
Wow, I don't know, just the fact that someone would do that, like it's interesting because like so I've always kind of wanted to expand more and move more out of town and play more gigs outwards, but like when I finally got a chance to, now it's COVID, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's killing it.
It really makes it difficult, at least for anything to stay committed. Like, you book something, then it'll be postponed. But like, not to harp on it, like, but like this idea of like certain areas being more competitive because there's more people. The positive, like, rose tinted view is there's more to learn, and like, and if you're just going there like full force, like you were at that time, like when you're just living there and that's all you get to do is focus on that. Like, have you like, so once you're like moving on from that, like, where are you in New York now? Where are you at?
No, I'm in Baltimore. I'm in Baltimore right now. There's nothing happening here. I'm just here right now.
Gotcha. I feel it. But like during this time, as you're like kind of expanding, like, did you like, after you started touring, was that when like just road dogged it forever, or like was that kind of like I guess the way I'm trying to say this is after you kind of circled the city around enough and really started the tour, did you feel like you needed to go back or just keep going and hit the road?
Go back to New York? Or...
Yeah, because like if you were living there for a minute and kind of like immersing in this like creative competitious bubble.
I'd say when I started, I toured all through, before I even moved to New York. I did a U.S. tour. I used to do like a U.S. tour every other summer or something. And, the first time I went around the whole U.S. was 2004 or 5. And then I went to New York, and I stayed there for 2 years straight. And then after that, I did another U.S. tour, and then went back to New York and moved into an apartment in a different area. And when that fell apart, I went on another U.S. tour, and I would kind of go back and forth from New York to a tour for a while. But around 2013, right when I put Tumbleweed out, I had gotten wrapped up in the Occupy Wall Street thing, and I was down there when that was going on, 2011 or 12 or whatever it was, and I ended up getting on this compilation album with a bunch of artists like Joan Baez and like Willie Nelson and, you know, Jackson Browne, Immortal Technique, all these like big names who are
Damn.
trying to contribute stuff to the Occupy Wall Street movement with this benefit album. So I got on that record, and the guy who put it together, he said he wanted to start managing me, and like, you know, I was like, okay, I never tried that before, so let's give that a try. And didn't turn out too good. And I kind of was like, well, I'm just kind of hanging around New York, not doing anything. I'm not playing any gigs. This guy has got me wrapped up as like the Occupy Wall Street voice and shit, and I didn't really want to do that forever. So like, I kind of just picked up, I threw Tumbleweed together really fast and just recorded it all in a basement with whatever songs I had laying around. And then I just booked this tour around the U.S. Well, no, it started out with this thing called Planet X Festival, which was a big like folk punk festival in the Midwest at the time. And I got booked on that, and ended up going out there for this little 2-week tour in the Midwest to play that. And I took a bunch of CDs with me of what became Tumbleweed. It wasn't called that yet. It was the same songs, but a different cover. And I passed them all out at that festival and went back to New York. And next thing I knew, all these people from all over the country who had come to that festival to like see, you know, Planet X Fest, went back to their hometowns and were like messaging me saying, hey, come play my house, come play my house. So I started kind of building these tour network around where all those CDs went. And between that and asking people who they knew in different states who, you know, had house shows or DIY venues, and kind of getting away from the whole bar scene and just fuck the bars, fuck the real gigs, go play open mics, go play basements, sorry, not open mics, houses, play like boxcars, wherever the hell someone had a show. And I found out like that really started to kind of pick up my name out there. People started to actually like listen at the shows versus, you know, make noise and talk while they're drinking. Right. And you know, I just kept doing that over and over. And basically I would just, you know, book a tour out west. I would get to Humboldt County, California. I would trim marijuana for my friend out there and make some extra money in case like I had shows fall through. So I had a little safety net of weed money. Just back around the South, up the East Coast, back home for Christmas, do it all again. And I did that like for like 2000, I guess 13 to like 16, like every year. I just stayed on the road.
Damn. Was it a wow? Like, cause it's interesting that like this cool compilation that you think would have brought all those opportunities wasn't the thing that did. It was playing one festival and handing out your own CDs. You know, like that's mind-boggling because like. I feel like at least a lot of people going into music they think it's going to be like that. You're going to on a compilation, it's going to be easy, and like, but I think that's the thing. It's like how you're doing it, how you fucking just book it and you go out there, you play the show to like 2 people, you play the shitty bar gig and meet the one guy who's got the house show. Because like the house, I 100% back you on that. I feel the DIY venues, the house venues, the weird art gallery venues, the venues that you don't think should be called a venue are the places where people actually listen more, and like the people you meet there are people that care more about music. It's weird. Like a professionally built venue that should be like the thing. Where they come there to care about the music doesn't really seem to be the thing. It's the people in these weird, like fucking just basements. I don't know.
Yeah, totally. I if I had stayed in New York and just like banked on, you know, this manager getting me somewhere within the music industry, you know, because I've had a handful of people over the years come out of the woodwork and say, hey, you know, I'm going to make you a star or whatever bullshit, and like it never works out. But, you know, just hitting the pavement and, you know, handing out CDs that you burned yourself and just, you know, meeting people and sleeping on couches and playing everywhere and anywhere you can get a gig. That's what really made the difference. I mean, so I'd say definitely. And people would ask me when I come back to New York, I'd go to like Cafe Vivaldi or some of the places I used to hang out at and play. And they'd say, yeah, you're getting out there and doing it. Why are you playing basements though? And like these little weird living rooms. And I'm like, because that's where people are paying. And they're seeing me there. Like you guys are sitting here, sitting in the same damn stool you were sitting at like when I left here a year ago, and you're still here, you know, it's cool and all. But like, I mean, that's why no one's paying attention to you. Like, you're not out there getting heard. You're playing for the same 20 kids every open mic Monday.
Yeah. Do you get antsy like being in one place?
Yeah, I hate it. It sucks.
Because like I don't know.
I'm literally pacing right now around my room.
Oh man, I do that shit all the time when I'm talking too. Okay, because like there was on the new record, and like this really made me think about. There's this line that says, "I will be your tumbleweed if you be my ball and chain." I'm like,
yeah.
so like kind of like even like getting out to New York and like kind of hitting these tours and like going around and like it's because I would do weekend warrior dashes, right? And I would play by myself. I would book a state and just find a bunch of house shows, come back the next, and I can only afford to do it every like month because like my day gig is I'm a music teacher, so like I can't really dip in the week, and I found that to be fulfilling enough to be like I'm constantly moving, chasing like kids around, and like, but like. I get this like kind of like you get so used to being in one spot and being like, okay, I'm here. There's a weird record store, a weird coffee shop, and like you just get so like kind of like, and I imagine living in New York too. There's shit going on all the time. So like to sit down, like, and I imagine that kind of would after doing what you did, because that's like the like extreme of it, just road dogging yourself for years on end. You know, like, like to be like, where the fuck's the next week gonna go? Like, so to have this kind of reflection time, and this is kind of a long-winded thing to kind of drive into this new record. I feel like this new record is kind of like more self-reflective in a way. So that all being said, like, do you find it hard to kind of like have kind of relations in more than one spot because they're like, you know what I mean? Like, I'd imagine like someone who's always on the go, like you are, a relationship would be one of like the fucking hardest things to have because like someone's in one spot and you're not.
Yeah, they're definitely have all fallen apart. They're hard. I mean, that's what a lot of that record's about is like love and breakups and, you know, being emotional stuff with someone. Because you know, I mean, a lot of it's about one particular girl that I was dating in 2017, 18. I thought it was like the one, you know, whatever that means. But you know, like I said, you know, I can't sit still. You know, it's kind of like I've had a hard time, and part of this is on me. You know, it's like you're not going to be able to build a solid relationship with someone on a mature level if you're, you know, wanting to go like hang out in like, you know, Wyoming and, you know, sleep on the couch and play, you know, a show at some like weird venue. That's just not going to work for the most part. But I wasn't really aware of that. I would say, you know, that was like one of my first, like, you know, actually adult relationships where I was like, you know, okay, now you have to move on to like sort of marriage and stuff like that. Cause I've spent my whole 20s like traveling and doing crazy shit. So, you know, I'm just not used to that kind of like level of like, you know, adulting commitment at the time when I wrote that. Because this album's kind of like based on something that happened like 7 years ago now. It kept getting held off because of COVID, so it's just dragging to get out. But I would say a lot of the songs on that album are about me and her. So you know, I would say that the line you just mentioned actually is about her and me. About the tumbleweed and the ball and chain thing. But I mean, you could apply it to anything, you know? And yeah, you're right. When you're just like, you know, a person who's kind of always looking, I have a really high, like, you know, stimulation level from just, like you said, constantly just, you know, going to the extreme of things. I kind of like, you know, get bored quick, kind of want to go do something else. My mind's always on my music or when the next tour's going to be, when the next album's coming out, when the next song's going to get written. And, you know, sometimes like, you know, you're with somebody and they just want you to sit and focus on, you know, shopping at like, you know, the hobby shop and like, you know, picking out like some wallpaper or whatever. And it's just like, I wasn't used to doing that. I would zone out and start thinking about, you know, lyrics. And next thing you know, like, getting kind of like under someone's skin because I'm not like putting, you know, full attention into the, you know, relationship stuff. And, you know, that's kind of on me, but yeah, you know, I guess it depends also who you end up with. Some people don't mind that, you know, the right person works with the person who you are, you know?
Definitely. Okay, I relate to that so much. That's why that line stuck out so much to me. I'm like, oh, I think this is it, because like I've kind of to a different extreme, right? Like I haven't got to travel as much and do as much, but within Cleveland we do a lot. And like I'm always trying to like figure out the next thing and driving my band crazy, being like they're do whatever. And like I've personally had a lot of problem with relationships as well, because like it's not because I haven't been in town, but it's because I haven't. You start to focus on a thing, and like that. So that makes a lot more sense with like even lyrically, kind of like, or musically, where you're coming from, because like if you developed kind of grabbing people's attention and realizing that as these kind of quick bursts of like 1-2 punches, and like, but those are impactful punches. It's kind of like you practice that punch 100 times, wherever that Bruce Lee quote is, right? And like it fucking hurts. That looked like it hurt. That's a 1-inch punch. He didn't say much, but he said what he said, and that hurt. Like, so to have that level of like line ready, that means you put that much time into it. And to think about like that, like just listening through your discography up into this conversation, I'm like, everything is like super dense. So like that makes sense that there's this kind of manic intention applied to it. And like I can see where that would be pretty time consuming, and like so it part of me is like, okay, that's stoked to hear that's what it is, because if not, if this was all just magic, I'd be like, what the fuck? Like,
I mean, you become what you put your energy towards, you know.
and like,
you know, if yeah.
I was gonna say, do you like, so since this is kind of like a recap of like this time period and it's just been kind of prolonged to be put out there, do you find yourself like now, because of the circumstances, like finding it easier to kind of be in one spot, and finding it easier to like kind of like slow down and focus?
No,
Okay.
not at all. I'm hating this. I don't like any of what's going on in the world right now. I want to go back out and tour, and you know, I just want to get back to the way things were. I don't know if that's ever going to happen quite the same way it was before all this. I think the world's going to kind of adjust in a way that I'm not really sure of how that's going to look yet. But I want to be back out touring really badly. It hasn't gotten easier sitting still, because when I sit still, I get into trouble, man. Like, you know, I've gotten into substance abuse stuff. I've gotten into bad relationships. I've gotten into like, you know, bad habits, and like, you know, I'm one of those guys who kind of does better on the move. Like, I did this one tour like right before COVID. I you know, fell out of a bad relationship, and I ended up getting completely sober and eating better and working out. And I went on the road for 3 months and did a tour, and somehow worked out 4 days a week every morning for an hour on the treadmill, hour jogging, and then, you know, crunches, curls, weight lifts, whatever. And then, you know, I would go and play shows and do the same thing like every day, 4 days a week, and just stayed sober the whole time. So, you know, that was easier than sitting still and doing that for me. Like, I just do better traveling and going. You know, and as far as all of it goes, yeah, it is time consuming. I'd say like that line, like sometimes the line, like, you know, the tumbleweed line you're talking about, that like 7 words or whatever, like could take like, you know, a whole year to write, right? Because you have to live it. So, I mean, I would say it's like a lot of work, and with everything, I'd say there's a little magic in the sense that, like, you know, you have to be born in the right situation with the right, you know, cognitive skills and interest, and like, you know, all the things needed to actually put something out on paper that comes out of your head, and plus the experience to get it going in the first place. So the magic is kind of everything locking together at once to make the circumstance happen with a person. So I would say that's the magic part. Maybe there's more, I don't know, but a lot of it is work too. You know, it's like working. You gotta put your, like, you gotta commit to something, you know, like you sell your soul to the devil, you know, like.
Yeah, no, that makes sense though, because like it's the time to make that impactful. And like so like when you kind of got, you know, sobered up, and like, was it easier to write kind of sober and on like in this tour routine? Is that like, so it sounds like that manic kind of like pacing is your comfort. And like, so like how, like in my mind, I'm trying to like see where in which, besides like taking notes along the road and just observing things and putting that like a song seed in the pocket to save for later. But like as far as like did like kind of sobering up and kind of the physical, like because you got that song about quitting smoking. I imagine that was part of this process. Like did all that kind of help the creative output and like kind of creative routine?
I mean, I wrote that smoking song before a long time. I was like probably 12 years old almost.
Yeah, I know that's from a different record.
I
I'm
was
cross
smoking when I wrote that song, but so I quit afterwards. But at any rate, I would say that no, I want to be like, what everybody wants to hear is that, like, yeah, I got sober and like put out the album I always wanted to release, and I finally really started to feel my lyrics and know what I was saying, and it was really sincere, and sobriety was great. But that's not the case. Like, honestly, like sometimes, like, I'll be honest, like sometimes I can definitely say that staying up all night and doing a bunch of cocaine and running around New York City and getting into crazy situations with like this chick or this like crazy bum or whatever the hell's happening. Like sometimes after all that's done, you're just sitting there kind of wired at 4 a.m. You end up writing this great song, and like that's happened before. That
Yeah.
like chaos kind of like sometimes inspires me to get things done. And I feel like when I've been like really strictly sober, very strict in routine, I'm so focused on staying sober and working out and like doing this sort of new. It's kind of like you become this new character, and instead of this like kind of like rambling like Woody Guthrie kind of like Rimbaud sort of like poet person, you end up being this kind of like gym rat type guy who's just like really focused on staying fit. And that doesn't really make me want to write music. It's just kind of, I mean, you'll live longer, but I don't know if you're really like, sometimes like, what's the point of being alive if you're not living,
Right.
So I'd say on some level, it's like if there's a way to kind of get to that output that I've had and sort of in my more chaotic moments with creativity, I haven't really figured that out, how to apply that to being completely sober and straight, like, and, having a very organized life. Like, I think it's time management, maybe. I just like, that's not where my focus is when I'm, running a mile.
Yeah. No, it definitely is its own thing, and it's just like another thing to have to like focus on, and like put your energy towards, and like kind of shift your attention to, because it's like it sounds like you're the type of guy that's like always like kind of like if there's a moment of silence, you're kind of filling it with what like just what's a good bit? How can this not a good bit, but a good what's the kind of the beauty within this to captivate to something else? Because I feel like one that's important how you said that, because that is like the answer you hear, like a lot of people like, yeah, I got sober and this is the best Metallica record yet. You know what I mean? Like, is it?
No, Anger was terrible.
It was.
Or some kind of monster, whatever it was. Anyway, go ahead.
But so like, and that's not life, and that's not sobriety. Isn't like I've always been sober. I've for some reason my brain's always been like focused on like how does the crazy like dude that makes no sense like how'd you do that on the guitar? Why is that the coolest thing I've ever heard? And like I analyze way too much and like have like put way too much focus on that, where it could just be a fart. You know what I mean? Like, and like, but that's where my brain's at, is like, so I've never really kind of had like the kind of like tangents with substance kind of to distract me from that like manic. No, you did that thing. That's the thing you meant to do. And then people be like, no, I just fucking put my hands here and it sounded cool. What? You know what I mean? Like, not saying that's what you just said, but you know what I mean? Like in my brain, I'm always trying to seek like a meaning that might not be there. And like, you know what I mean? Like sometimes it just is, which is for me has been like through like going through high school. That's all I've ever learned was like, oh yeah, that cool guy that played the AC/DC song just fucking doesn't know how it goes. Like he just makes it sound like he does.
I mean, I wouldn't. At the same time, I wouldn't say you need drugs or anything to write, or need chaos and stuff to write. I just think in some situations, it's been more helpful than being completely like straight with stuff. I mean, I've written songs sober. I've written songs on drugs. I've written songs like half asleep. I've written songs like, in all kinds of situations, like just sitting there crying over paper, But I would just say if the interest is not there to do something or make something to begin with, you can, it doesn't matter what you sniff or fucking drink, it's not going to make anything happen. Like, you're not going to become something that you aren't already because you did a bunch of acid.
Right. No, I think that's well said because like there's got to be that kind of going back that enthusiasm for writing. You got to fucking that's got to be the thing that makes your brain like go trains, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. You have to. It's just like opening another window to look through. Like when you write, it's like whether you're writing through the fucking writing through the lens of a relationship or a job at Walmart or like missing your parents or whatever. No matter what that is, drugs are just another thing that you could end up writing through a window of. So, but like I said, I wouldn't endorse anyone to do anything because they think it's going to make them a better something. Just, you got your own path, man.
Yeah. No, I agree with that 100% because I've seen friends that, think that's going to help them and that ultimately is a distraction because like, I think this conversation we kind of keep circling and it comes back to like putting in the work. And like, one thing I want, like when you said, you can spend so much time working that you're not living. It's kind of brings up that question: do you want to live the work or work the live? And like that's such a weird fine line because like I feel like if you're doing the thing you want to do, you're obsessed with the work, but it's still like work, which can take away from the living aspects of things, right? Like having a relationship with someone in one spot becomes way, way harder of a thing to do because you're so focused on doing the thing that you're enthusiastic in your life's about, And where in the vice versa, like if you were like kind of just doing this bullshit thing to get you through it, you have all this extra stuff, but you're not as appreciative for it because you're like the thing you do sucks and it kind of like carries over. So it's a weird balance of everything. Like it's a weird balance of like taking in and putting out with like substance or seeing through different views or now no substance and just hyper focus and lack of focus and like enjoying what you do and fucking hating what you do. Like so like with that kind of like I don't know, all like that was like just me kind of summarizing my thoughts of everything to figure out what I wanted to ask next. But like like kind of like one thing I found interesting to pull into like a better form of a question, not just a statement, is like looking at the album like This Is Art and this new record, the big chunk of it has a band within both. Like this is Art, from what I remember, all the tracks are with a band except for the last one. And like in this one there it goes in and out, but like I feel like the band serves what you do like songwriting wise much more on these two records than in that first one, which would make sense because you kind of defined it through Tumbleweed. But with this newer one, you venture into some weird like territory that's not just like kind of like a common kind of like the progressions that were kind of found on This Is Art. But like Charlotte's Divine is like one that comes into mind. Like that's a mood, and like so with this record, it's supposed to as well as like kind of the topic being around this one person. Musically, was there certain influences on it? Sorry, that was a fucking twist of a question from like
Sure.
me like having like a kind of like mental inspiration to like fuck I should make it a thing you can respond to as opposed to yeah.
Charlotte Divine is kind of like, I'd say I was listening to a lot of Tom Waits when I wrote that, so maybe that was sort of a vibe for that to be inspired by. He's another lyricist I like a lot, actually. But I don't know, I'm not sure. I just kind of had these songs, and like I got bored, and I wanted to put a band on them. And there was more rock vibes to some of them. They just sounded like they needed more of like rock and roll, punk rock, dirty garage type of like energy to them. And Call It Art was like that was just me kind of like tripping out and like wanting to just experiment with no real idea as to what it would sound like. Just letting my like brain go like haywire and just seeing what happens. So I wouldn't say there's been any sort of plan. I just kind of went with what I felt at the time.
Because
that's not a great answer.
No, but it doesn't have to be, like, because I think of like Between the Lines, and that's like such kind of a blues driven like, and that's got kind of that hip hop feel you're saying that was influencing you early in our conversation. and then like then hearing something like Charlotte's Divine or what was the country sounding one? Here's to you.
Here's to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like something like that, which is I guess this one has more kind of genre instrumental tropes than some of the other records.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's like I don't know. I mean, I don't write like a specific sound, I guess. Some songs sound like it's like country. They just sound like a country song. Other sounds like, a more dancey rock song. Some sound like, rap or like blues. And some are like folk or folk punk, whatever. But like I got kind of the people like, see me as this like folk punk guy, and like I don't really agree with that at all. I just I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what folk punk is. I definitely don't, dress like train core or nothing with like washboards and all that. Like, I'm in that circle. I know a lot of the bands in that circle. I guess like maybe the way I've gone about my career is kind of punk rock in like the sense that it's the DIY thing, and I have some fast songs that are kind of really beating up the guitar, and I don't know. I'm not sure how like I got wrapped up in that genre, because I think I write lots of different stuff, which might be like partially why I have a hard time sort of finding a niche, because like, someone's going to hear Call It Art and then they're going to hear Tumbleweed, and, not everybody's going to really be like, oh, cool, I like this too, because they're so different. But you never know.
Was it? Well, that's kind of like I don't know, the punk part of it should be like, that's fucking dope. Like, Matt's doing some cooler shit now, or this is fucking equally as cool. Like, they kind of pick a flavor and stick to it. It goes back to like kind of what we were saying earlier. Like, eventually it starts to lose the inspiration. And
Yeah,
like,
you're bored, man. Yeah.
so, well, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, and like, so I think it's important to be in flux and like to in like hear those tropes and be like, how can I fucking use this? How can I use a fucking banjo in my stuff? Like, I don't like it. Sorry.
Stagnation is the death of inspiration, I think. So you got to just keep moving, because when you stop moving, you're going to stop writing, stop creating things. And I don't mean moving like physically moving, although that's a thing too. Just moving in like, a mental or spiritual space. You just got to keep being interested, keep being excited, and like keep finding like the child inside you that's ready to like play with crayons,
Yeah. No, 100%. I think that was beautifully said. And like, so I was having this conversation with Alexander Hacke, and he was saying like they're these nomadic like kind of techno musicians, and like they're from Berlin, and like they do all this crazy cool stuff, and their whole thing was they were always on the go, and they were until now, of course, but like, and they're badass, and everything about them is cool. But we were getting down this line, and it kind of brought up a similar point where like to always be moving and kind of growing and keeping that like spiritual mindset. But then a lot of spirituality is kind of about being still. You know what I mean? A lot of times like humans, like we want this like kind of adventure and need this kind of like momentum, but we strive to be still. And we're inspired by the woods and nature and all this stuff that's like not moving. So it's a really weird, I don't know. Do you find that like during like as soon as you're like moving and actively doing shit, do you ever want just to fucking stop? Like, do you get this moment like where like you strive for that nature, that stillness, or like is it? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do for sure. I mean, I definitely like to have. I'm a very extroverted introvert. I kind of need a little bit of all of it. I'm all about going to like a party and just like having a crazy time and like hanging out with people. But I definitely need that like sort of kind of calmness. Driving, like when I drive on tour, I love going by myself, because like I don't have to listen to any music. I don't have to talk to anybody necessarily. I don't have to like worry about not wanting to pull over in the middle of some weird canyon and just like and out and sitting there and sunset and having it piss somebody off. Like I just drive in silence a lot and listen to the wind, and that's kind of like that kind of peaceful place for me. Going to the beach. I love the water. I love going to the beach and just like kind of just sitting there by the water, watching the tide come in or something. And those kind of things. I like the desert, being in the mountains, being out west. Nature is cool. I love anything that is visually and like physically comforting, spiritually comforting, be at any given time. Yeah, I definitely need a balance.
I think that's a really, to have that kind of like striving for these like kind of manic adventures, then have that distance and that stillness in between, even though you're still moving to some degree, right? The waves are moving, the car's moving, the wind. It's like that's an interesting place to find that stillness.
Yeah, people. Go ahead, sorry.
No, keep going.
No, people always like ask me, "What are you listening to while you're driving?" I'm like, "The wind, man. I hear enough music."
Well, they're probably like, yeah, okay, cool, hippie dude, like the wind.
No, it's like I don't know. I mean, like I get tons of CDs from people on tour to listen to, and like I'll pop them in sometimes. But you know, it's like I also think the older you get, sometimes the harder it is for hit you the way it did when you were like 25. You know, like it's like you've heard so much, you've done so much, you've lived so much. It takes something really special to kind of like knock your soul up a bit. You know, after experiencing so much of the world. A lot of times, I think people in general just stay settled into their like musical habits from the past like decade once they get to like 35, and like you know. Cool with that, and they still find stuff that's new and interesting. But a lot of times, you see people just kind of staying stagnant if they even listen to music at all. In between the chaos of their like you know day-to-day lives, depending on what they're doing at that point, with like you know family or kids or full-time jobs or whatever. And for me, it's sort of like I hear so much music. Sometimes you know something pops out, and I'm like, "Whoa, that person's a really good lyricist, or that person knows how to write a song, or this band's really good, or they're playing some cool guitar stuff." Like I can recognize when something's really something to it. Like I can see the it factor with people. I feel like if I was like you know worked in the record industry in like the 60s, I would be a great A&R guy because I can always pick the people who are going to make it. Like I've like found like so many people who've gone places later on, and I'm like, yeah, that was them, that was the song I liked, that was like, so it's I don't know, something, just get a feeling and you're like, they got it.
Was it well just from the amount of like witnessing, you know what I mean? Like a lot of that just comes from like, you know, finding the line that gets people's attention as they're walking by. A lot of that training, a lot of that like, you know, busking factor is kind of how it works. And like just, you know, you've played so many shows and like that's what you're going to do. You drive to go be at the show, you know what I mean? You go to witness the music. You're going to listen to the music, so you get there and then you like that's one thing that kind of drives me crazy about shows is like when someone's playing and someone's trying to talk with you, you know what I mean? Like I can't fucking hear what you're saying.
Yeah, no, oh man, yo, that shit, like, I don't know, man. People like walk at shows and there's a band playing loud and they're in your face in your ear, and I'm like, dude, I can't hear half the shit you're saying. And I just like nod in my head, like, yeah, okay. Yeah. I feel like an asshole, but I'm just like, look, I can't. It's just wait till the band's done, man. Like,
100%. There's no way I'm gonna like an interesting thing, I guess, because like, do you ever like vocally? Do you ever get fried? Like from,
that's the other thing. People try to scream in a bar. I gotta play every night. Someone's not even thinking of the fact that, you know, this guy needs to rest his voice. Half the time you're playing without a microphone, so it's just like, give me a break. I can't have an in-depth conversation about like, you know, what was the true state of the Soviet Union or something while I'm sitting there like hearing some loud ass emo band. Like it's just like, cut me some slack, bro.
Well, I also imagine people come at you very politically too. I bet I kind of imagine you get a lot of people like me who are like, tell me about writing, and then you get a bunch of people that are like, tell me about politics. Like, in the
Go ahead.
No, just like, and to have a conversation like that or like this in that type of environment, it's fucking awful. Have any conversation. Not that the topic or the person's bad, but just like to try to do this when there's like how you're like, because I'll play a bunch of shows just in Cleveland for a week and like, I'll lose my voice like mostly because I'm hyping someone up, like or trying to convey and be like, yeah, that was great. And like, you know what I mean? That's where I lose my voice. It wasn't the 4-hour set. It was talking to you in between the other set, you know?
Hey, you think you can give me a show in Cleveland coming up at sort of like the beginning of February, last minute? Is that possible?
Fuck yeah. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Cool.
Like,
Yeah. Okay. I just remembered I kind of need to go through there to get someplace, and like a house show or any old thing would be fine just to stop somewhere.
yeah,
But
text
anyway,
me,
yeah.
text me about that. This is gonna be a plug for this show. So in February, if this is out by February, come to this show. We'll figure out. I got a cool spot. I'll try to put. So what? Do you know what day? Bit in the interview. Where have you played in Cleveland?
I don't even remember, man. I
Yeah?
don't even know. I know I played there before, but I can't remember where.
Do you go through
I've been
Cleveland a
playing
lot? I know you go through Ohio a lot.
much in Cleveland. I know I have, but it's not like a regular stop. I haven't had a consistent, contact there. I played Columbus a bunch and Akron and, where the hell's their place? Alliance and Cincinnati. But yeah, so I don't know if I can play Cleveland a whole lot. I played there before.
Okay. Well, we'll put something together for sure. How do you know?
Cool.
How do you know Keith Kenny?
Oh man, that cat was friends with this girl Francie Moon, who
Oh,
I
she's
used to
dope.
tour with.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, a long time ago I met him. She was friends with somewhere, and like he was killing it on like guitar stuff and the loops and all those jams. So like, and he was like a super nice guy. He's like one of the few people like who, I mean, you meet a lot of cool people on tour, but he's one of those guys who's just like, I've only seen him play like once or twice. Like we don't really know each other that well. But like he's always just like been like super fucking cool when I've needed like help with something or put a shout out into the void of Facebook for like some contact or this or that. He's always just like, yeah, man, fucking how's it going? Hope you're doing good. Seems like he's got a reason to be nice to me. He's a cool guy, I guess.
He is one of the nicest dudes. I did a chat with him a while ago, and like, and then like, cause I wanted to reach out to you. I've been wanting to reach out to you for a while. But I just didn't know, like, because I started doing this during the shutdown. This is how I handled my manicness. Like, this is how I handled not, like, booking shows, because I kind of wanted to keep reaching out to people and meeting people, so when the show thing becomes a possibility that at least I didn't do nothing. And those virtual open mic nights and virtual gigs, fuck, those were all right, but they kind of blow. The people that we were doing them with were cool, but, it's not the same. So,
no, I hate him.
Yeah. So talking with him, and because he like I met Frances Moon like she came through. Actually, I was hosting an open mic night at a sober bar in Ohio called Not a Bar.
Nice.
And she was playing with some group, it was her and like two other guys, and like it was like a band she was doing a folk tour with, and like she was fucking badass. But I don't think she was heading it. I think she was like, because I know she plays drums and a bunch of other things. But crazy small world, man. Well, all right. Well, like let's cap it at this. We'll figure it out, man. But yeah, awesome, my dude. Well, thanks so much for the chat, Matt. And I'll hit you up soon with this, and you hit me up soon with that.
Cool. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Later, dude.
All right. Take care. Bye.